I grew up too poor to know the law could work for me. Now, I am the law. I found this thread through a colleague who said it kept her going during her first year of practice. I read it over a weekend and decided mine was worth adding. Hi, my name is Tyler. I am 31 years old. I live with my dog in Jackson, Mississippi, in a small house I own. I am a civil rights attorney. I earn $78,000 a year doing work that I would have done for free if I could have afforded to, which I could not for a long time, which is part of the story. I grew up in Yazoo City, Mississippi, about an hour north of Jackson. Small town, tight community, the kind of place where everybody knows your situation and half of them have the same one. My mother, Missy, raised me alone. She cleaned houses during the week and worked a register at a gas station on weekends. She was the hardest working person I have ever known, and she was chronically one unexpected expense away from a problem. We rented a house on the south side of town from a man named Mr. Pruitt, who my mother had rented from since before I was born. The house had issues. There were always issues. Plumbing that needed fixing, a roof that leaked in one corner of my bedroom, a heating unit that went out every winter like it had a calendar. Mr. Pruitt fixed things eventually, sometimes, and charged my mother for repairs he was legally required to make at no cost to her. She paid because she did not know she did not have to, and because she could not afford to find out. I did not know either, not then. I was 15 when I started volunteering at the Yazoo County Legal Aid Office. Not because I had any plan, because it was 3 blocks from my school, it was air-conditioned, and Ms. Tate, who ran the front desk, let me sit in the back and do filing after school without asking too many questions about why I needed somewhere to be. Ms. Tate was a paralegal who had been at that office for 22 years. She had seen everything twice. She spoke about the law the way mechanics speak about engines, as a system with rules that could be understood and used by anyone patient enough to learn them. She did not talk down to me. She handed me files and explained what was in them and answered my questions, and after about 6 months, she started letting me sit in on client intake appointments. I watched people come in with problems that felt enormous and unsolvable, and I watched Ms. Tate translate those problems into legal language. And I watched the law, imperfect and slow and frustrating as it was, sometimes work for people who had nothing. I had never seen anything work for people who had nothing before. I started reading, not because school required it, because I wanted to understand what I was seeing. Ms. Tate pointed me toward resources, landlord-tenant law in Mississippi, consumer protection statutes, the basics of civil procedure. I checked out every library book available on the subject, and when those ran out, I found things online. I was 17 when I realized my mother's landlord had been breaking the law for years.
The repairs he had been billing her for, the heating unit, the plumbing, the roof, were habitability repairs that under Mississippi law, a landlord is required to make at their own expense. My mother had been paying for them out of her own pocket for over a decade. I did the rough math. The number was not small. I brought it to Miss Tate carefully, not as my mother's situation specifically, but as a hypothetical. She confirmed what I had read. Then she looked at me for a moment and said, "Is this hypothetical?" She rolled her eyes and said, "Then let's talk about what your options actually are." We spent 3 weeks going through it. The receipts my mother had kept, not because she knew they would matter, but because she kept everything. The lease agreements going back years, the relevant statutes, what could be recovered, what the process would look like. I was 17 years old building a legal strategy at a desk in a legal aid office, and I have never felt more certain about anything in my life. My mother was reluctant. She did not want trouble. She did not want to make things complicated with Mr. Pruitt because she had nowhere else she could afford to go. I told her we did not have to do anything. I also told her what the law said she was owed. She thought about it for 2 weeks. Then she said, "Show me what to sign." Miss Tate supervised everything. We filed in small claims court. Mr. Pruitt showed up with a dismissive attitude and no documentation. My mother showed up with 3 years of receipts organized chronologically in a folder I had put together for her. The judge was a small woman with reading glasses who asked Mr. Pruitt several questions he could not answer satisfactorily and awarded my mother $840. $840 was not going to change my mother's life, but watching Mr. Pruitt write that check changed something in me that has not changed back. I graduated high school and enrolled at Jackson State University on a Pell Grant and a merit scholarship. I majored in political science. I worked part-time at a law firm downtown on a recommendation from Miss Tate to a colleague, doing administrative work, anything they would let me do. And I made myself useful enough that by my junior year, they were paying for my paralegal certification through an online program they sponsored. I became a certified paralegal at 21. The firm kept me on. I worked full-time after graduation doing paralegal work in their civil litigation department. I was good at it. I was thorough and I was fast, and I could read a file and find what mattered in it before most people had finished their coffee. I also started looking at law school. The cost was enormous. The path was not obvious, but the firm had a program, informal and not widely advertised, where they had sponsored one employee through law school in the past and might do so again for the right person. I asked my supervising attorney, a woman named Miss Chandler, who had been practicing for 30 years and who did not waste words, whether that program still existed. She said it depended on the person. I asked what it depended on. She said performance, commitment, and the ability to articulate why they wanted to practice law specifically, not just generally.
I wrote her a memo, 2 pages, detailed. It included the small claims case from Yazoo City. It included a description of what I had watched Miss Tate do and assisted her with. It included a clear statement of what kind of attorney I intended to become and why that mattered in Mississippi specifically. She approved the sponsorship. The firm covered my tuition at the University of Mississippi School of Law. I worked part-time for them throughout. I graduated at 27. I passed the Mississippi bar on my first attempt. I took a position at a civil rights nonprofit in Jackson. Starting salary, $52,000. I have been promoted twice since then. I now handle housing discrimination cases, employment discrimination cases, and voting rights cases across the state. My mother still lives in Yazoo City. She does not rent from Mr. Pruitt anymore. She found a different place 2 years after the small claims case. It is better, and she knows her rights now, and she calls me when something seems wrong. Usually it is fine. Occasionally it is not, and then I make a phone call and it gets fixed. She is very vocal about how proud of me she is. I told her I was grateful she kept a stable roof over my head, and I was proud of her too. She is a year into a practical nursing program at Holmes Community College. She says I was her inspiration. She came to my bar admissions ceremony. She sat in the front row in a dress she had bought specifically for the occasion, and when they called my name, she stood up before anyone told her to. I did not see her do it because I was at the front of the room, but my colleague told me afterward, and I have thought about it regularly since. I own a small house 6 blocks from my office. I bought it at 29 with a down payment I had been saving since I was a paralegal. The mortgage is manageable. Every Friday, I do pro bono work, tenant cases mostly, landlords who charge for repairs they are required to make, security deposits withheld without documentation, lease terms that do not comply with state law. The same category of problem that started all of this in a rental house in Yazoo City when I was 17, with a folder of receipts and an idea about what the law was supposed to do. I am not finished. I have not done what I intend to do yet, but I am on the ground I am supposed to be on, and I know what I am building toward. And that is more than I had at 15, sitting in the back of a legal aid office doing filing because it was air-conditioned. Miss Tate retired last year. I drove to Yazoo City for her retirement party. She introduced me to people as one of hers. I did not correct her because she was not wrong. If you were somewhere right now where the law feels like something that happens to people like you rather than something that works for people like you, I want you to know it can work for you. It is slow and imperfect and requires patience and documentation, and sometimes it fails. But it has rules, and the rules are learnable, and people who learn them have options that people who do not learn them do not have. Find your local legal aid office. Most counties have one. Most offer free consultations. Most have people like Miss Tate who will answer your questions if you show up and ask them. The law is a system. Systems
can be learned. I am proof of that.